All right, so if you look at the top of the page, if you look at the top of the page, you will find out the equations. Now, what I would tell you is this. Standard form, you can go ahead and put a little smiley face on the side. We love it, okay? Because it tells us good information. It tells us where the center is and what the radius is. Now, just keep in mind though, just keep in mind that this is the inside the parentheses, they are both minuses. Okay, inside the parentheses, they're both minuses. They're minus by default. Okay, so if you remember the standard form of the equations that you learned last year in Algebra 2, all those, what are those, like a cubic function, quadratic function, they always have this form as well. Okay, now for the general form, I would say, is something that you probably don't want to see. Okay, general form is something you probably don't want to see, because if you see them, that usually means work. Now, here's another question. Here's another equation I want you to write down. It's not printed yet, so I want you to write it down. This is x squared plus y squared equals to r squared. This is the very, very simple equation, because this means the center of the circle is at the origin. Okay, so if you are preparing for the SAT, if you're taking the SAT in the near future, I want you to know that this is on the SAT. Okay, the x squared plus y squared equals to r squared, it is on the SAT. There's always one question about circle. There's always one question. It's either that you have to write the equation, you have to tell the equation, or they ask you whether this point is on the circle, inside the circle, outside the circle. Okay, so now let's go ahead and learn how to tell these info. So for A, where's the center? Center. 0, 0. We just said it. And the radius is 6. Okay, so h and k, in this case, they are both 0, so that's why you have x squared plus y squared on the left. And the right-hand side is r squared, so the r is simply 6. Yes? Because the form is x minus h squared, right? So why don't we see x minus something? Because there's nothing to minus, to subtract. So in this case, h must be 0. So that x minus 0, which is just x squared. Yeah, hk is the center. Okay. So for part B, where is the center? The center is -3, comma, 0. And the radius is 2. Okay. So that's easy. So if you're not blind, if you know your equations, you have no problem extracting the information. But the next two will be a little bit more challenging. So we have this. This is not the happy form. This is the general form. This is not giving us the center or the radius straight away. So what do? This is the time we will do our completing the square. So first is that let's move the constant to the other side, because the constant is always on the other side. And then this is where you have to be very careful. Now I'm going to move the terms, move the x's together, move the y's together, because that's how we would do the completing square. And because we are about to do completing the square, I'm going to leave a little space right here for us to write down some numbers. Okay, So make sure when you move the terms, you are moving with the operation sign in front of it, whether it's a plus or a minus. So they're still the same thing, okay? All we're doing is move the -3 to the other side, so it becomes +3. We move the x terms and y terms so that they are right next to each other. And now we say what? We say, oh yeah, we want this to happen. We want perfect square. Because if we have the perfect square, we can tell the center of the circle. So how can we have this perfect square? And we say, all right, let's look at the first one for the x. So we look at the x right here. What do we have to add? +4, so that you will have x minus 2 squared, right? Now, when you +4 on the left, immediately you will +4 on the right, because if you leave it for too long, you will forget. So we have x minus 2 squared. That's equivalent to this whole thing. Equivalent, okay? And then y squared plus 6y, we are missing what? We are missing 9. Well, let me go ahead and use orange in this case, +9. So you're going to add 9 over here. So you have y plus 3 as a result. The right-hand side you have 16. So after you do the completing the square, you're like, oh, now I can tell the information about this circle, because now I can tell the center. Where's the center? The center is at 2, -3. And the radius is 4. Questions so far? How do we do how we do completing the square? Yes. Okay. So now I will tell you a couple of things that students tend to miss when they are doing completing the square with this on this topic. Common mistake number 1. They forgot to write down the square. They wrote down the parentheses, but they forgot to write down the square. Okay. Common mistake number 2. They forgot that there's an addition sign in between those 2 parentheses. Now, the reason why they are missing all these, it's all mental, okay? Because students are very busy. They are thinking about how to reduce this trinomial to a perfect square. So they just focus on the stuff inside the parentheses, and they forgot the square on the outside. And because they only focus on the stuff on inside the parentheses, they forgot that there's a plus right here. So what I'm going to ask you to do tomorrow is that when you come into class, I will ask you, can you write down the equation, the standard form for circle? Okay. Oops. All right, so that's part C. And now we can draw the circle. 2, -3 is here. Since the radius is 4, that means I would do at least be able to plot 4 points. And they're all 4 units away from each other. There you go. Okay, so all 4 units away from the center. That would be the circle. Okay, and you just try your very best to draw a nice circle. Okay. So if you're okay with part C on this level 1 easy type of completing the square, And we'll go to part D. Next one. Now this one is not a level 1. This is more like a level 2 kind of completing the square because you have something more than just x squared. You have 4x squared. Okay, you have a coefficient. Okay, you have a coefficient. So that could complicate stuff a little bit. So what we do when we have a coefficient, what we usually do is that we always factor out the two terms that are involved. Okay, so just factoring out, and we are not factoring out the 4 for the whole thing. We are just factoring out the 4 for these two x terms. I mean, technically you can factor out the 4 for the whole thing, but let's just do this first because they may not have the same number in the future. Okay, so let's ask the question. Yeah, we are going to make perfect square. If I want to make perfect square, what's missing in the first parentheses? We're missing 16, right? So if, no, that's not 16. We're missing a 4. All right, now, so now I'm going to say something that your previous math teacher have said. So to figure out what this number is, you would always divide the middle number by 2 and you square it. Because if you look at the work that you've done at the very beginning, you can realize that the relationship between these numbers, like this and this, it's always 6 divided by 2, and you square it, that's 9. 8 divided by 2, which is 4. 4 squared, 16. Okay, so now, so you add 4 on the left, and then you add what on the right? Now, this is the level 2 content. Because you're adding 4 inside the parentheses. So you are not adding just the 4. You're adding the 4 inside the parentheses that's being multiplied by the 4. So you're actually adding 16. So I'm writing this, I'm giving you this color coding so that you can see how this is 16. Right now. Then we escalate to level 2.5. So we say, what are we missing here? Well, this is the middle number right here. It's just -1. So -1 divided by 2, it's 0.5 or 1/2. And 1/2 square is 1/4. So you're adding 1/4 inside the parentheses. That's being multiplied by 4. So you would have to you add 1/4 times 4 on the right hand side. Okay, so whenever you have a coefficient on the outside, which you will see abundantly this week and next week, so don't forget that to maintain equality, you have to see very clearly what numbers you are actually multiplying or dividing. So now we can obtain the perfect square. The first one is going to be x plus 2. The second one is going to be y minus 1/2. Now, 4 times 1/4 is just 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. So the right hand side is just 14. Now, if you can annotate, I will annotate something right here. This is not standard form yet, okay? Because you need to divide both sides by 4, Okay, you need to divide both sides by 4. So ultimately, you would have x plus 2, parentheses square, plus y minus 1/2, parentheses square. That's equal to 4. And we get what? Center is -2, 1/2, and the radius is 2. So if we are drawing it, we say -2 comma -1/2 right here, and 2 units up, 2 units right, 2 units left, 2 units down. Okay, so we have a little circle on the left. Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah, 1/2. It's. Oh, thank you. Yes. Okay.